Kendrick Lamar tried to warn us, but we didn't listen. Despite Kendrick already telling us that he was a prophet, we didn't believe him until it was already too late. Because now we know that Kendrick Lamar can predict the future. But that would all change April 7th, the day that Kendrick prophesized in The Heart Part 4 that J. Cole would apologize. So when J. Cole named his album Might Delete Later, he wasn't kidding. But in order to fully understand the context of J. Cole's 7-minute drill, we have to recognize that J. Cole was approaching this beef with conflicted intentions. Because on the one hand, he wanted to prove that he was the #1 contender in rap and could verbally smoke Kendrick Lamar. Because with the whole world watching, the competitive nature of rap forces you to defend your title. But on the other hand, Cole wants to stay true to himself. His personal authenticity is what's got him this far in rap. Furthermore, his ability to connect with fans has a lot to do with his genuine persona. This guy literally told millions of people how he lost his virginity, in way too much detail. And this dude's a multi-millionaire who sometimes looks homeless and bikes everywhere. The Carolina native is transparently himself, and that's why people love him. So a verbal altercation with Kendrick kinda went against his Master Oogway persona, because Cole is well regarded for his empathy and wisdom. But I'ma keep it real and tell you that my last video did not age well at all. Like everyone else, I recognized that there wasn't a lot of conviction behind what J. Cole was saying. Because if Kendrick's like that diss track, J. Cole had to fake animosity for one of his friends. And it's worth considering that J. Cole helped jumpstart Kendrick's career, because the Carolina native actually brought Kendrick to Dr. Dre. But that's only the beginning of their long history, which I will dive into shortly in an upcoming video. Because the hip-hop civil war runs deeper than most people know, and everyone and their mother was picking a side. So on his diss track Like That, Kendrick describes himself as bipolar, where he refers to his tendency to simultaneously be friends and enemies with his rap competition. So it's kind of a love-hate bromance relationship. But J. Cole echoes a similar sentiment on his hesitation to engage fully with his diss. Because like it or not, J. Cole's 7-minute drill was not the career-altering verbal diss that most fans expected. And I was so wrong in thinking that something better was coming around the corner. Because after a literal decade of subliminal shots, I thought that J. Cole wanted all the smoke. And on top of that, J. Cole even has songs where he mentions Kendrick by name. So I was like, okay, there's really no mystery with who J. Cole's been talking about for the past 10 years. But in the immortal words of DJ Khaled, you played yourself. Because no one knew what would happen next. But before we get to the broader impacts of what J. Cole's apology means for hip-hop, it's worth acknowledging some of J. Cole's lyrical highlights on the track's 7-minute drill. One bar that I found hilarious was the "Your arms might be too short to box with the god who lives his life without the pressure of a constant facade." So he's basically like, Kendrick, you're short as fuck. I already had to save you from a fight with Diddy. And why are you pretending to be something you're not? Now, if you're unfamiliar with what I'm referencing, Kendrick, Diddy, and J. Cole got into a physical altercation. And J. Cole basically had to save Kendrick, because Diddy was super pissed about Kendrick's Control verse, where he referred to himself as the King of New York. But by calling out Kendrick's facade, Cole could be referring to the Compton native's savior complex. Because on his album Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, Kendrick talks about battling with the perception that he is the savior of hip-hop. However, Cole could also be alluding to performative activism and how critics argue that artists like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole pretend to be invested in social issues to profit off of the collective struggle, which is something that I don't personally believe Kendrick does deliberately. But J. Cole has made this perspective known with lyrics saying that some activists got so rich they probably wished that we stayed oppressed. Which is then followed up by a Studio Steppers line, so we know exactly who he's talking about. Because this is a reference to Kendrick's release Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And although J. Cole accuses Kendrick in the song of being fake progressive and woke, ironically similar accusations have been made against J. Cole. Both artists received criticism during the BLM protests. But when listening to all these disses, it's clear that J. Cole was conflicted, misusing his influence, and his inner turmoil was best reflected on the lyrics where Cole openly praised Kendrick's lyrical dominance and acknowledged their friendship. In the song, J. Cole says that I fuck with him, but Cole admits that peer pressure influenced his response, with lyrics saying my text flooded for a toxic reply, and I love my brother. When Cole described praying for peace, it was clear that he was reluctant to fully engage and take a definitive stance against K-Dot. So on April the 8th, J. Cole would change the perception of hip-hop beef forever. Cole surprised the world with his apology to Kendrick Lamar. And this is like when you hit your younger brother too hard, and then you apologize and you're like, don't tell mom, it's okay, you can hit me back, I'm so sorry. Because J. Cole wasn't kidding when he named the project Might Delete Later. And while some fans might be disappointed with his response, I believe it demonstrates an extreme level of maturity. To recognize one's flaws in a conflict and try to be authentic is something that takes a lot of courage. And J. Cole did not identify with the negative energy that he put into this diss. So he was accountable for his mistakes and took responsibility for his image. Because J. Cole doesn't need the toxicity of beef to promote himself in rap. The best way that J. Cole can continue to market himself is just by being himself. And that's all anyone can expect him to be. Follow the madness.